Hey everyone, welcome back. In today's video, I am going to explain the top 10 most asked DevOps interview difference questions. These questions are very common in AWS, Kubernetes, Docker, and Git interviews. So let's get started. The first question, the first difference is ALB versus NLB. So ALB stands for Application Load Balancer. It works at layer 7, and NLB stands for Network Load Balancer, and it works at layer 4. So it supports host based and path based routing, and it is mainly used for the low latency routing and handles millions of requests. So it's basically based for high traffic scenarios. So it is basically used for gaping applications, and it is mainly used for the web applications. So this is the main difference for ALB and NLB. The next difference is security group versus NACL. So, security group and NACL is basically a firewall. So security group is a stateful firewall, and NACL is a stateless firewall. What does that mean? Stateless means it does not NACL has the stateless firewall because it does not remember the previous traffic, and security group is a stateful firewall, so it remember the previous traffic that comes. So it automatically allows the return traffic, but NACL requires the explicit allow and deny rules. So there is a no automatic return traffic. That's one means the stateless firewall. So that is this is the main difference. And security group can be applied at EC2 instance level, and NACL works at applied at subnet level. This is the main difference between security group versus NACL. Then the third one is EBS versus EFS. So what does that mean? EBS stands for Elastic Block Store, and EFS is the Elastic File System. So EBS has the block storage volume, and EFS has the file storage system. So this can be attached to the one EC2 instance. This can be attached to the multiple EC2 instance. It can supports multiple availability zone, and it is the region specific. So it has the high performance, and this is mounted via NFS protocol. So the main difference is basically it is as the block storage, it is as the file storage, and this is going to attach to the single EC2 instance. It can be attached to the multiple EC2 instance. That is the main difference. Then the next one is uh, the private bucket and public bucket. So private bucket means it cannot be accessible on internet. So it's basically not publicly accessible, but it can be accessible uh, on internet, so we can easily access it. So it has the security risk, but this one has requires the authentication. So it is used basically for the internal purpose. So bucket policies and ACLs control access always start with a private and open only when necessary. So this is the private bucket restricts the internet access, while the public bucket allows it. So this is the main difference between private bucket and public bucket. Then there is a public IP and private IP. So the difference is basically public IP connects to the internet, private IP connects inside the VPC. It is the inside of the virtual private cloud, and it's globally unique address. It has the globally unique address. It is basically used for the internal VPC communication. It not internet accessible. The private IP cannot accessible via internet, but it can be accessible via internet. So this is the main difference between public IP and private IP. Then the difference between IAM user versus IAM role. So IAM user has the permanent identity and IAM role has the temporary identity. So in the IAM, we can create the user and we can get the username and password. For that, by using the username and password, we can access and log in into the another account by using the username and password. So it is basically created for human users, and it is role is basically used for the AWS services and applications. So it does not require the password, but it requires the password, because whenever we created the user, we are getting the username and password, and by using that we can log in into the account. So yeah, this is the main difference. IAM users are for people and IAM roles are for the services. The next one is Git pull versus Git fetch. So what does that mean? Whenever we clone the repo, and when we do the Git pull, it download the changes uh, and merge in the merge that changes automatically, means it download the changes from the remote repository and merge that changes into the local repository. But what git fetch only download those changes, but does not merging them into the local branch. So that is the main difference. By basically git fetch, we can track that what changes are previously done by the another user. But if we are showing that if after fetching up by applying the command git fetch, and we are confident that we are going to merge that changes into our remote repository, and we want that updated changes, then we use the git pull. So yeah, the git fetch is safe to review the changes, and git pull directly updates the branch. That is the main difference. The next one is Kubernetes. So what is the horizontal pod autoscaler and the vertical pod autoscaler? So what horizontal pod autoscaler is automatically adding or removing the extra pods based on the CPU usage. So if CPU usage is greater than 70%, then it automatically adds the extra pods. Uh, but and it also removes the extra pod when the CPU usage is less than 30%. So that time the extra pod that will create it whenever the high traffic of the CPU, then the extra pod gonna delete it if the CPU usage is less than 30%. So that's the difference. And vertical pod autoscaler is basically adding the existing pods, means scaling the existing pod if there are changes and the changes CPU and memory per node, no node count change, resize the existing pods. So it's basically resizing the existing pods, not adding the extra pods. It's resizing the existing pods that already have. So that's gonna increasing the limits. If there are 500 MB limits, then it's gonna be increased to up to 1 GB. And yeah, that is the main difference. The next one is Docker CMD versus entry point. So CMD and entry point are the command used in the Docker file when we created that. So basically CMD is a default command, and entry point is the main command, main container uh, process command. So it's this is the main difference. So it's CMD provides the default command, and entry point defines the fixed executable. So CMD can be overridden easily, and entry point cannot be overridden. While the building the Docker file, if we put something on the building time, then CMD command can be overridden, but entry point does not do that. So yeah, that is the main difference between Docker CMD versus entry point. And the other difference are deployment versus DaemonSet versus StatefulSet. So what basically the deployment do? Deployment handles the identical pods. So it's basically manage the identical pods by maintaining the desired state of the pods, like replicas and things like that. And the stateful set is basically it's managing the stateful applications that require the stable pod identity, persistent storage. So it is basically used for the database and storage. So uh, that is the difference between deployment and stateful set. And daemon set means daemon set ensures that the pod run on every node that will create it. So if we adding one extra node, means machine, easy to machine, uh, for the example, and then the one pod, so the pod also get deployed to that node, and so one pod per node, so it ensures that one pod should be run on every node that will create it. And so it's basically used for the logging purposes, and for the monitoring purposes, that we will get the logs of that nodes. So this is the main difference between deployment, stateful state, and daemon set. So yeah, that's it for this video. These are the top 10 most asked differences for the AWS, Kubernetes, and Docker, and Git. So if you understand this clearly, you can confidently answer most of the questions. uh, so don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.